my name is Jacey, and I have been a missionary in Uganda for the last 3.5 years. And Uganda is in East Africa, and it's right next to Kenya. We border Sudan, the Congo, and then Tanzania and Rwanda is in that kind of cluster there. So what you see up here is a mixture of some things that I have brought back from Uganda. All different types of arts, crafts, and things to do with dance, obviously. I have loved dance since I was probably 2, like since I can remember. And I've loved Jesus since then, probably too. And I've finally come to a point in my life where I've realized what a gift dance is and how to use it to glorify God in a way that I didn't before. But before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about the dancing in Uganda and give you a little history. We'll do some activities, and then at the end I'll leave it open for questions and answers and that sort of thing. Is that good? Okay. So I've been in 2 different parts of Uganda, which says a lot because all the different regions of that country, you feel like you're in a different country. So in each area, you have different styles of clothing, you have a different language, you have different traditions and cultures in the family, with marriage, with children, and you have different styles of dancing. So I lived in the north for the first year, which is called Gulu, and they are the Acholi tribe. And so you can tell if you watch a whole group of people dancing, and they choose their style from their region, you can tell where they're from based on how they're dancing, which is pretty cool. And a lot of times their dancing correlates with the physical environment that they live in. So in the north, everything's a lot flatter, more like plains and dirty, like dust, and kind of what you picture when you think Africa, like hot, dusty, flat. And so a lot of their movements are based on foot rhythms and the head. So they do a lot with the head and the feet, but not as much with the hips. And then when you come to the central, which is where I live now, and where my husband and my stepdaughter are from, it's more hilly and kind of like this type of stuff, you know, with the environment. So they deal more with their hips, and will do more things with the shaky, shake, shake, right? Instead of doing da-da-da-da-da-da, right? So theirs is a little bit more shake, 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 and hippie, hip, hip, okay? But over the time, since all these tribes have been able to come together for different festivals and things, they've started to borrow movement from each other to kind of enhance their own style. So you kind of get a taste of their native dancing, and then they kind of will add some different things in. The key elements to the dancing are costumes and music. So you'll see here, especially, this is from the Central, where my husband's from. So this is a typical costume that you would see the women wearing. And what you have are, on their ankles, they have these bells. Like, they're actually made out of like seed pods, and they have the different seeds and jingles in it, and they tie them around their ankles so that whenever they're doing this or this, you hear that ch-ch-ch-ching. Then they have these big fat feathers on their behinds, so that whenever they're shaking and doing their thing, the feathers are doing this, so it accentuates their hips all the more. It's pretty fascinating. It is. Because their hips already move, and then you get the feathers on top of it, and you're just like, what are they doing? Then, of course, they always have some sort of drum accompaniment, which you can see on the far side. Incredible rhythms, as you can imagine Africans having. And they do a lot of their own music through their mouths. They sing. So they will sing or make noises or holler or do the la 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 la. Then they have the drum beats to do it. So it's different from what we're used to. We're used to go turn on the stereo and here's my iPod, and we turn it on and we start dancing. But they have their own instruments that are handmade, and then they use what God has given them, their mouths, and then of course their bodies. Then if you look at this one, this is probably better. You can see this woman here has something tied around her, and it's not the feathers, but it's like a scarf. They do that a lot in the north, and it's a tradition for them. It's really strange, but they feel like they're not supposed to dance unless they have this tied around their waist. Because there would be times where I'm like, teach me something. And they'd be like, oh, hold on. And they would go get some sort of fabric that they have or something, and they would tie it around and be like, okay, now we can go. And I would ask them, but I never got a straight answer. It's just part of their costume for dancing. And so they'll normally just wear a scarf around, and they're usually fully clothed, the women in the north, at least the ones I worked with. That's not every tribe, but the tribe I was working with. And they're the ones that will do more of the footwork and the head. And they also do instruments, but maybe a different style. And they use a lot of their singing, and they even use a whistle. So they'll have a leader who whistles, and they'll know when to change the step. So it'll be like, whoop, whoop, and then they start changing and doing something else. So in the north, you would see, I'm not doing it full out, but ignore this part. Some cool stuff that they do is they jump, and they'll use their legs, and you'll see them jump back, and then they get the head going, right? Or they'll be doing this, and it's all this stuff, which is so wild and awesome. And there are a lot of reasons why they dance, and this is obviously the cultural dancing. But in both regions, in the central and in the north, their reasons for dancing are celebration, for weddings or festivity, something that they're celebrating. Women and men do dance, and they usually have a very specific role that they play in this specific dance. And you won't see the men doing the women's movements, and you won't see the women doing the men's movements. The costumes are very different based on male or female. And the instruments that they play. Like there's one with the north where they will play something called a calabash, which is kind of like a hollowed out giant pumpkin that's been hardened. I'll show you a picture. These things. See them? So they're like dried, hollowed out pumpkin shells. And so they get really hard, and they use this metal, almost looks kind of like a whisk, but they don't connect. So it's just like if you cut off the top of a whisk, like when you beat eggs, you know? It's just these strings, and they take it, and it makes this very like noise. So the men will be playing that, and then the women will just be dancing. And some of the dances are for courtship. And I've witnessed that one. That's also interesting. But for now, usually now they do it more entertainment. And the background of it is for courtship. It's not necessarily done to actually find your mate, but in the past, that's what they would do, is they would do this circle dance. The men would be around, the women would go around, and the men would look for the woman that they liked the way they move. And then they would go and dance with them, and it's kind of saying, hey, baby, you want to go out? Like, that type of thing. In so many words. They also have some courtship dances in the central, which is the Uganda tribe. And then they'll also have some dances to celebrate like harvest time, right? So you're planting and you're harvesting. They have every single dance is specific to a different reason or specific purpose. Whereas here, like we have ballet and jazz and hip hop, and you just do it, right? Sometimes it's for competition, sometimes it's for performance or fun, or it's kind of the same thing, but they have very, very, very specific movements for each dance. And I couldn't begin to teach you all of it because I'm still learning. It's so much. And they learn from childhood. Like, from childhood, that's part of just their upbringing, is to learn the different cultural dances and styles. In terms of other styles of dancing, like ballet, or modern, or hip-hop, those things have definitely started to come up in society there, especially in the central, where I am, which is the capital city. A little bit in the north, because I did it when I was there. I would have ballet classes and different things, and hip-hop classes, even with the women. Just for fun, because I was like, hey, you teach me, I'll teach you something. So we would have classes, and it was so fun to watch them, because they've never moved like me, and I've never moved like them, and then you bring it all together, and it's just insane. But in the central, they actually have a couple of studios that have opened up within the last probably 5 to 8 years. But most of them are started by non-Ugandans. So one is by a French woman, one's an Italian lady. So it's great, because people are coming in and trying to raise up kind of generations of dancers. But what is hard is that you don't have as many Ugandans leading the dance movement, because they don't get to have the opportunity that we've had growing up here, where you can just be like, hey, here's my 2-year-old, I want her to start ballet, or jazz, or modern, or whatever it is. And we have just a plethora of opportunities here, that really struck me there, is that they don't have that. They don't have that consistency either, because even the people who've come in to try and start something have probably left and didn't have someone to keep running it, or it's running and it's not able to keep teachers who are qualified to teach technique. So it's been really, really hard. But an encouraging note is I've seen one particular Ugandan, and I think he has a documentary coming out. Look for it. It's called Bouncing Cats. He has started a breakdancing company, which is so awesome, and has helped to really get kids off the streets and come to kind of like a YMCA type deal, like a youth center. And he teaches them breakdancing. And it's really empower these children, because they can move, they have natural rhythm. They just need someone to kind of guide the way. Now, I don't know whether he's a Christian or not. That's the one thing I'm not sure of, that I don't know exactly his philosophy and what he's leading towards, but I do know that his heart is in the right place to get these kids off the street and have a purpose, rather than stealing or drinking or getting high and that sort of thing. In terms of the desire that people have there to learn, it's incredible. I've taught all different styles of dance there, all different ages, young and older. And I've really been impressed by my older students who they actually have the potential to have the technique, it's just no one has ever taught them the right way. And I've been able to work with them, and I've been trying to raise them up that they can go out and lead. And I teach, it's a secular studio, but I teach from Christian perspective. I say whatever. So I go in and I say, listen, I'm going to teach you technique, but I'm not going to leave it at that. I'm going to teach you how to use this gift that God has given you and use it for the right purpose, not the way I did it for many years that got me nowhere. And it's just been really cool to see a lot of breakthrough in these young adults. I say that because it makes me feel old, but they're college students, which is young to me. And it's just neat, but it's also sad, because I know that they would be so farther along had they had the opportunity at a younger age. So it has really helped my perspective on being so grateful for what we have in this country. And I constantly pray that they will have more and more opportunities to learn and to grow in the different styles of dance, and to learn how to use it to glorify God, which is number one, obviously. I wanted to share with you guys a little bit of my impression progression of, because I've watched, most of the people in the Central that I've watched dance were just dancers. Like, I didn't know them personally. But in the North, they were women that I got to know very well. And I worked alongside of them for a whole year. And I mean, I would dig in the garden with them. I would make jewelry with them. I'd pray with them. We'd sing and we'd dance. And I just got to know these women's hearts and their love for the Lord and their stories. Because I don't know if you know much about the North, but the North is an area that's really been torn apart by war. And for generations, like 20-something years, non-stop war. So a lot of the younger people I've worked with, they don't know anything but war. Their entire life has been violence and fear. And just now, within the last 5 years, they've been experiencing, probably 3 years actually, even when I got there it wasn't okay yet, starting to experience peace and like rebuilding their homes and taking back their land that they owned and really understanding what it means to like be able to live and not fear being kidnapped or murdered. The northern part of Uganda, if you've heard of it in the news or if you've ever read about it, they are the ones who have been victim to the Lord's Resistance Army, which is Joseph Kony and his team of people who've gone and kidnapped children and forced them to become soldiers. So the whole entire northern region is a product of that war, where you have former child soldiers who are trying to reintegrate back into society, who've either escaped or been freed somehow, some way. And it's still ongoing, especially in Sudan and the Congo. And it's still a threat to the north that Joseph Kony could come back, because that's actually where he's from, which is ridiculous, because he's actually stealing children from his homeland and turning them into soldiers. That's the sad part about it, and it's been really hard to hear those stories. But what I want you to take away from that is that I've watched these women who have been abducted and raped and their children taken, family members murdered. And even in the midst of not knowing and fully experiencing peace yet, but in the process of it, when you watch them dance, it is the most incredible thing I've ever seen, because it is a moment when they don't have to think about anything. They're not focusing on the things of the world, and they're just enjoying themselves, and they are really praising God, these women in particular. Not every cultural dance is praising God, just like here, not everyone is using dance in a way that I would promote, but these women in particular, like, they will put on, it's not full costumes like that you would buy from a magazine or online. Like, these are things they, like a strip of fabric that's on the ground. It might be really dirty, but they're going to brush it off and tie it around their waist, or tie something on their head or on their wrist, and just create this environment where they just dance for joy. And the smiles on their faces are incredible. I wish you could see it for yourself. There's nothing like it. And it really touched my heart, because it's so easy for me to complain about things, or used to be, not so much anymore, but easy to complain and get complacent in where you are and comfortable where you are. And then you see their circumstances and their living circumstances and the things that they've faced, and yet they can still be joyful and dance with joy. And it really just changed my perspective on things, and saw that how healing dance is, how joyful it should be, because it hasn't always been joyful for me. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I was pursuing dance as a career for a while and doing it professionally and semi-professionally on the side, and I was really after it for the wrong reasons. Like, I wanted the fame, I wanted to be on stage, I wanted people to recognize me and acknowledge me to kind of validate all those years of training. And it didn't quite happen or reach that level that I wanted it to. And it was just really empty for me for a while. And when I finally started to realize that it is a gift from God and that I can still be at a high level of technique and performance, but my heart can be different. And my intention behind it can be different. I found a whole other world of dance that I never knew. And I was able to actually move and express myself in a way I never could have done before, even when I was in the companies and the performances and different things. And these women really helped me, because I was just coming out of that lifestyle that I was in, and showing me just how powerful movement is, and that it's not just American, that it is worldwide, and it is a universal language. Because there were times when I would go into villages and I can't speak the language, and I'm by myself, and so all I knew was to dance. So I would start dancing with the little kids any way I knew how, or even clapping, you know, and it became a bond that tied us all together. And so I'm just learning more and more not to take for granted that gift that God has given us, and for you to just be encouraged by these women and these men who have experienced the most horrendous things that we can't even fathom. We go through horrendous things here, and I'm not comparing because we all have our own hardships and difficulties. But I truly can't fathom some of the things they tell me that they've experienced. It sounds like it's from some like horror film. But to see them just jump and dance and smile and have fun, like, it's really amazing. And there were times even when the women would come in from the field digging. And if you don't know about African tradition, at least in Uganda, women tend to be the workers and men don't. And good thing I did not marry a very traditional Ugandan man, because my husband works. And I'm not the stereotypical Ugandan wife. But these women are just, they are digging in the field with babies tied on their back. Okay? Ridiculous. Literally. Babies here, I've seen it two ways. One baby here, strapped on, they got their hoe and they're going. And I'm like, I'm dying by myself. I'm just me, and I wasn't pregnant, and I was just, okay, all right. Like, they're just strong, and when you look at them, sometimes you're just like, I would be so tired. And they would be, like, they're just exhausted. Because they work in the field all day, and they go home, they have to prepare food. They got the babies crying and all this, and it's crazy. But when I would offer the dance classes, it was really neat because they would literally drop their hose at the entrance. It was like kind of an open air area. They'd drop their hose, take off, some of their garments, and we'd come in, and several of them would just come in so heavy. Like, you could tell there's just this burden on them. And my prayer is always, when someone comes into one of my classes, that they would leave without any burdens. If anything, just free, right? So these women came in, one in particular, and she was so heavy. Like, you just could see it. She kind of walked in. It's like, I said, hey, are you okay? No. And she's almost crying. I was like, okay, all right. So I did a hip-hop class with them. For the first, half hour, she didn't really do anything. She kind of stood in the back of the room. And the next thing I knew, she joined in, and she was laughing. So it was like night and day from the beginning that she walked in to the time that she left the classroom. And I know it was God. Like, it wasn't me teaching anything. It was like a total, God, Holy Spirit thing. And just how God was showing me just how powerful dancing can be in movement, and doing it to celebrate and glorify Him. So I've had really amazing experiences, which I wish I could share all of them with you, because they're all in here somewhere and all up in here. But those are the main things about dance in Uganda. Hope had told me to talk a little bit about cultural dance and arts, which is why I kind of brought a lot of different genres of art and craft to just show how resourceful the people in Uganda are. If you look at some of these things, like these beads are made from paper. You can pass it around. So these are paper beads. Those are from the Central. This is handmade by children with physical disabilities, and it's actually made out of clay. Yeah, and that's from the Central too. And then these two are from the North. And if you look at them, they're actually seeds that have fallen from a tree. And they turned it into a piece of art. This kind of stuff is common throughout most of the region. It's using different pieces of like wood chips and piecing it together. So when you look up closely, some of them you can look up close and you can't even tell what it is, and then when you pull it back, you're like, oh my gosh. And even with this one, like if you look really closely, you can see that every piece is like a piece of wood, but then when you pull it back, you see I think she's pregnant with a baby on her back, which I wouldn't recommend. And then this is made from the fig tree, from the bark of a fig tree. So just showing just how creative and resourceful people are. And then this, of course, is just like, what do they call it? Dried palm leaves. So these are just dried palm leaves that are woven together and dyed, which is crazy and awesome. And then, of course, the paintings. This is just on a cloth, a piece of fabric. So they don't have like some of the canvas stuff that we have, but they just paint directly on cloth. This one's also cloth. And this is fabric. They don't make the fabric itself, but the colors and the dyes are handmade. And this is actually, these are made by my mother-in-law. So if you want to look at those.
What is the fabric when it's before?
This is it's just a plain like white fabric. Sometimes they'll have a tint to them, like an off-white. But all of the design and the different colors there that you see, that's strictly her hand. It's a dye they use from vegetables.
Oh.
Yeah, it's vegetable dye, and then she has a technique of how she twists and turns everything. You know, like tie-dye, but it's really unique in how they do it. And then sometimes in the North, they will do it with porridge. Yeah, it's so cool. They'll lay out the cloth in the hot sun, and they'll take kind of like a teapot of hot porridge, and they will make the designs that they want on the fabric. And then they let it dry in the sun, and then they add the dye to it, and then when they wash it, where the dye couldn't touch where the porridge was, you'll see the shapes that come out of it.
Oh.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Have you ever tried it yourself?
Yeah, I've done it with them. Yeah, with their guidance, obviously. I wouldn't say 100% by myself, but yeah, it was a huge training ground for me to do anything and everything imaginable. So I show you all of this just to get an idea of how creative these people are, and they love what they do. Like, it's really amazing to see artists at work, just like here. But I seem to be a little bit more impressed sometimes with this because they're using things I would never think of using. Like the dried palm leaves or the beads or even the seeds from the tree, and they turn it into like a complete work of art, which I am just amazed by. And you'll even see children being resourceful. Children on the streets, if they don't have toys, they make them. So a lot of them like to play soccer or football, we call it there. And they will make their own balls out of the palm leaves. And then with like different, like if they see plastic bags on the floor, on the ground or something, they'll wrap it around and they will create their own ball and play soccer with it. And then you'll see other children who will take, oh, I should have brought these. Oh, you would have loved them. There are some street children who are trying to raise money to go to school. And they'll take kind of like a wire, okay, like a hanger. You know, like a hanger in the closet? Something sort of like that. They don't have that, but that material. And they will create a little man on a bicycle so that when you push it, the little man's legs go like this, and they'll just use scrapped fabric and make it and form a little head, and it's like this, and it's all made out of just like spare wire from something. And then other children will use like juice boxes. We have like big juice boxes, and they will cut it out and put little people in it, and then actually put wheels on it, and then attach the wire thing and push a car. And it works, it functions. Like, it's not like, oh, here's my car. It like literally rolls.
That was amazing, right?
It
was.
Was it? Okay.
I had to make them as a challenge.
That's awesome. So you see, I mean, everywhere you look, it's just resourcefulness, and it's pretty amazing. Are there any questions that you guys might have for me? Yes.
What do you do besides besides just teaching a dance class?
Mm-hmm.
Do you, like, what else do you do?
Well, my first year, I was under an organization up in the north. So I lived literally in the bush, which was pretty awesome. And I did everything. I learned construction, making bricks. I did some HIV counseling, daycare children, making beads. Digging in the garden, planting, farming, whatever the need was, we did it. Or we did sort of like, kind of like medical. I was really free to do whatever I wanted because I was the only long-term missionary who was not a Ugandan. So they kind of just let me go as the Spirit led me. And a lot of times I would end up doing hospital visits and just pray for people and different things. And the dance was more on the side that I did. But when I moved to the Central, and I was no longer with that organization, I've been able to just focus strictly on dance and dance ministry. So what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years is teaching dance at different locations. One is at an actual studio, like a ballet studio. I work with children with physical disabilities, so I'll do classes with children in wheelchairs, which is so fun. And that's more just volunteer stuff. Most of what I do is volunteer. And really just teaching them about Jesus and teaching them how to move. A lot of the kids don't have the facilities and rehabilitation that we have here to help them move more efficiently in their wheelchairs. So a lot of them would just sit in like really uncomfortable positions and not move anything. And I just started saying, bring them all, like just bring them in. I don't care if you've ever seen them move or not, like bring them in. And we've gotten to like huge breakthroughs with some of the children in just moving their fingers to the beat of the music, which has been just, that's a whole other talk. And then I've taught at some Christian schools and working with children and adults and doing some seminars through churches about dance ministry. And something that God has really started to show me is how we should not just dance for Him, but dance with Him. And then by way of the Holy Spirit. So God's really taken me on a journey where I was convicted to dance for Him. And I did that for a while. And then I realized I wasn't looking at the fullness of God. I was just focusing on this big God that I have to perform for, I thought. And He's like, no, it's not about dancing for me, it's about dancing with me. And so I had a huge revelation about, like, when I dance, like I'm dancing with Jesus. So we have God, Jesus. And then God revealed to me, like, you're kind of missing another part of me, like, what about the Holy Spirit? I'm like, what about the Holy Spirit? I don't know. And God just revealed to me, like, there are moments, like stop thinking and stop planning and stop choreographing and stop trying to make everything perfect based on technique and just move and let the Holy Spirit guide me. And that's been the last piece of the puzzle so far in my journey, that has allowed me to enter into a place where I can just call it like His presence, like the fullness of His presence, where just having complete joy, almost like a child. I don't ever remember dancing without knowing someone was watching me, because I've always been in dance class since I can remember, and it was always about, no, your feet have to be like this, and you have to be this, and you're not the right size, and you need to lose weight, and all this stuff. So I've always known people were watching, and I had to be perfect. And it's been just a huge breakthrough where God has shown me, like, it's not about perfection. It's just about loving Him and using this gift that He's given me for Him, with Him, and by way of the Holy Spirit. So that's what I've been teaching to a lot of people. And that, again, could be a whole other seminar. Any other questions before we do one last? I'm sorry, I'm a little over. Okay. I have one little activity I want to do with you guys before we go. Any questions before we do it?
Is it just Ugandans? Is that the right term?
Ugandans.
Okay. Who base their culture around dance, or is it pretty much all of Africa?
I would say a huge majority of Africans.
Okay.
I mean, Africans are known for their rhythm and their dancing. I know Kenya for sure, but I haven't really traveled a lot throughout Africa. I've just been in that one area, but I can pretty confidently tell you that most of the culture throughout Africa is just on dancing and singing and crafts. A lot of handmade wooden things, and very artistic, very creative. Any other questions? Okay, stand up please.
Think too much, but as soon as you read what's on this piece of paper, I want you to do the first movement that comes to mind. Okay? But don't let anyone see what you have.